Dear students, today we are going to deal a topic from chapter 9 financial management investment decision. There are different kinds of decisions. In that first one we will see investment decisions. Now investment decisions are very crucial for the organization because whatever funds are raised for the organization, those funds need to be carefully implemented or carefully used in the organization. So these investment decisions relates to how the funds are invested in different assets. So in my previous class I have already told firms raises its funds and those funds are used for two types, or those funds are put to use for two basic categories. First one is investment in assets, and in that we had seen tangible assets and intangible assets. And second type of a need was to look after the day to day expenses of the firm. There I gave the example of purchase of raw material, payment of bills, payment of wages, salaries, etc. So now today we will continue the class long term sources as well as from short term sources. So investment decisions are long term investment decisions and short term investment decisions. Now investment decisions, that is why we say they relates to how the firm's funds are invested in different assets. So there are two types of assets: fixed assets and working capital assets. Like we need to maintain working capital also, and we have to invest in fixed assets also. So based on that, investment decisions are broadly categorized into two types. They are long term investment decisions and short term investment decisions. So we'll see first long term investment decisions. Now long term investment decisions are also called as capital budgeting decisions, and they are very crucial from the point of view of the firm. So we'll see what exactly capital budgeting decisions are, or capital budgeting decision is. It involves committing the finance on a long term basis. Means capital budgeting decision is based on long term financial requirements of the firm. Long term requirement of the financial requirement of the firm means purchase of fixed asset, purchase of land, might be purchase of another site, might be putting up another factory premises, etc. So here there are some examples of capital budgeting decision in a firm. For example, making investment in a new machine to replace an existing one. It means what? If the old machinery is outdated, it is not giving that old machine with the existing one, then we call it as a capital budgeting decision. Or acquiring a new asset. Yes, if the firm has decided to acquire a new asset, then that also is a part of capital budgeting decision. Opening a new branch. Now if a firm decides to open a new branch, then they have to start from scratch in the new place. Starting a new branch means you are going to create all fixed assets for a long period of time. So all these examples are relate to capital budgeting decisions. These decisions are very crucial for any business since they affect its earning capacity in the long run. Yes, I have already told, because you are pouring or you are investing a huge amount to create a asset, to replace a old asset with a new one, starting a new branch or coming up with a new factory premises, right, etc. They involve huge amount of capital, and the bearing is directly on the earning capacity of the firm for a long period of time. Such decisions we call them as a long term investment decision, or we also call it as capital budgeting decision. Second one is short term investment decisions. Now short term investment decisions are also called as working capital decisions. Suppose if a firm has raised 2 crores rupees for its operations. Entire 2 crores they will not invest it in fixed assets, because they have to keep aside some portion of their funds to look after the day to day expenses, or to maintain liquid assets in the form of cash, stock, inventory. What exactly the meaning is? Working capital decisions are concerned with the decisions about the levels of cash, inventory, and receivables. Now, these are assets, current assets. We call them as current assets because these are the assets which can be easily converted into cash. That is why the firm need to maintain cash in the form of liquid assets or in the form of current assets, and investment in such decisions are called as working capital decisions. These decisions affect the day-to-day working of a business. These affect the liquidity as well as profitability of a business. Suppose if the firm needs urgent cash, and if they have any short term investments, they can immediately sell it and generate the cash, and whatever requirements are there for a short term, they can fulfill that requirement. So maintaining liquidity in the firm is very important to maintain the profitability of the business. Efficient cash management, inventory management, and receivables management are essential ingredients of sound working capital management. So these are some of the important factors for having sound working capital management is how you maintain inventory, that is your raw material, receivables, that is your debtors and book debts, right? These are cash. Even see, if the firm keeps too much of cash with the firm, unnecessary cash with the firm, it affects again its profitability, right? Because idle funds, you need to pay again interest on that. So how much cash should be maintained, how you manage your inventory, and how receivables, that capital management in the organization. So we'll see once again, investment decisions relates to how the firm's funds are invested in different assets. Those decisions are divided into two types, that is long term investment decisions and short term investment decisions. So long term investment decisions, we also call it as capital budgeting decisions, which has a bearing on the firm for a longer period of time, and outlays are quite huge. Short term investment decisions, we also call it as working capital decisions, which are concerned with how much cash is maintained, how inventory is maintained, and how receivables are managed. Now there are different factors which we need to see when we are taking capital, when we are considering capital budgeting decision. Now when a firm decides to put 100 crores of rupees, 100 crores of rupees in fixed assets suddenly, so 100 crore is not a small amount, it's a quite huge amount. That is why we call it as a decision of capital budgeting. So when firm decides to have such a huge investment, there are certain aspects need to be considered. First is cash flows of the project. When a company takes an investment decision involving huge amount, it expects to generate some cash flows over a period. So when, suppose if a firm is spending too much of money on capital budgeting decision, how much monthly or yearly from that project they are generating cash or generating revenue is also considered. These cash flows are in the form of series of cash receipts and payments over the life of an. At that time, what they consider, what is the span of that investment proposal, how much cash receipts, series of cash receipts and cash payments are considered. The amount of these cash flows should be carefully analyzed before considering a capital budgeting decision. So In short, when they are deciding a particular project which has two huge outlays or which has a huge investment, at that time the company finds out how many series of cash inflows they have, that is receipts they have, and how many series of outflows they have. Depending on that, they will clearly analyze those series of cash inflows and outflows, and then they will decide on capital budgeting decision. Second one is the rate of return. The most important criterion is the rate of return of the project. These calculations are based on the expected returns from each proposal and the assessment of the risk involved. Now here they have given one example. Suppose a company is going to invest 2 crores rupees 2 crore rupees on one particular project, right? And there are two proposals, that is project proposals, or even we say there are two projects, project A and project B. The rate of return of project A is 10% and the rate of return of project B is 12%. Risk is same, investment is same, but A fetches only 10% of the return and B fetches only 12% of the return. So here the manager, finance manager or the project manager will choose returns you are getting in back also matters when it is related to capital budgeting decision. Third one is the investment criteria involved. The decision to invest in a particular project involves a number of calculations regarding the amount of investment, interest rate, cash flows and rate of return. So there are different criterias to be considered while selecting a project when it is a capital budgeting decision. So which are those criterias? How much investment? What is the amount of investment? First thing. How much interest rate? What are the cash flows, cash inflows as well as cash outflows? How much in return you are fetching? That is rate of return from that particular project. So these are some of the criterias which need to be considered before going for any capital budgeting decision. Now to analyze each project and to analyze whether the project is profitable or not, which project is profitable, which project is not viable, there are different capital budgeting techniques. So a firm uses different techniques of capital budgeting to finalize the proposal, which proposal to accept, which proposal to reject. There are some capital budgeting techniques. Those techniques are used to finalize the particular project, that is capital budgeting, to make capital budgeting decision. So there are three important factors need to be considered or affects capital budgeting decision. They are cash flows of the project, the rate of return, and third one is the investment criteria involved. Thank you.